This is preparation. So the plan number one, you have mandatory vaccination. If there's a lot of pushback, and that's what people, like us are working towards, to get people to question what they're being told and to not just accept it. And people say, we're not having it, in large enough numbers. Then they'll go to plan B for them, which is what you've kind of indicated, that you will not be able to come out of lockdown. And by the way, another lockdown's coming. And yet, around the world, authorities seem to be terrified of me. I've been banned from Australia by the government. I've been banned from YouTube. I've been banned from Facebook and other platforms. And now I found out this week from someone who contacted us that for several months now, which kind of seems to cover the period of the coronavirus pandemic, I've been banned in Mexico because they've blocked davidicke.com. They're not censoring to show you how much power they have. They're censoring because they've got no choice. They have to censor because their narrative is so threadbare, so contradictory, so unsupportable by people's personal experience that if you didn't censor the unraveling of it, then it would be all over the cutting room floor, as it were. So they have to censor, and it's up to us and people that value the truth to start, and it's happening, to build platforms of communication which will not be censored by these psychopaths. They want as their plan A mandatory vaccination for a virus which, even if you believe it exists, there is a gathering consensus estimate even in the mainstream, in the Centers for Disease Control, that if you're under 70, the infection to fatality rate is 0.004%. And even overall, if you include all the old people, then it's 0.26%. There seems to be recurring figures at the moment. So the justification for all the social distancing, all the transformation of human society, the track and trace surveillance system, which is designed to lead to what you're talking about, the Chinese credit system, where if you don't do what the government says, then there are consequences, and also to the mandatory vaccination. And these things are not pulled out of the air. They are prepared for over a long period of time. This is a really long projected agenda that we're looking at, and we're only seeing one section of it now, the one that's being introduced as we speak. Whether the authorities and the media support something or attack it, whether they encourage it or whether they suppress it, is simply, does it advance the agenda of human control, or does it undermine the agenda for human control? And that's the criteria for everything. And you see all these contradictions. They say one thing and then they say another. Well, but if you come from that angle, does it advance the agenda or does it challenge the agenda? That's the common denominator that explains the contradictions. And you mentioned earlier about, and it's a very important point, about the social distancing of go there, don't go there, do this, don't do that. And what happens is, if you, if we go back a few years, I wrote in one of my books, my goodness me, it's a bit more now, that I said, just go through a city about your normal business for a day and just note how many times you are told to do something or not do something. And even then, it was a lot of times. Now you increase it 1,000-fold and more, and almost every minute, you're being told to do this or not do this, go here, don't go there, etc. And what it's doing, it's pressuring people into acquiescence So people become just docile responders to impulse and input without question and without resistance. This is why it's so important that we hold our uniqueness, and we don't respond to being told what to do all the time. And just don't cooperate with your own enslavement, and they can't enslave you. Beaches of England in the last few days, I rest my case. So they can't do it physically. They have to do it by controlling people's perceptions. And the key four-letter word that they use to do that is fear. Because once you get people in fear, they will look out for someone or something to protect them from what they've been manipulated to fear. And death is the biggest fear, because it's fear of the unknown. This is why doctors have so much power. Save me, doctor. And so when this whole pandemic hoax was triggered, they set out to terrify the population. I mean, you look at the pictures in China of people falling over, collapsing in the street. Remember those pictures? Why? It's the same virus, right? Why has that not happened in the West? The idea, and they use Italy the same. I go into this in my new book, The Answer, which is coming out in the next few weeks. They did the same in Italy because they wanted the West to have a Western example. China, yeah, it's frightening, but it's still a long way away, and it's another culture. But Italy was Western culture. People in the West could relate to it. If it's happening there, it could happen to me. It was all building the fear. The cult behind the pandemic hoax is the cult behind the climate hoax, the human-caused climate hoax. And you look at the solutions that both of those things say we must impose to save the planet, or save us from the coronavirus, and they're basically the same. They're the centralization of power and the dictating of the fine detail of our lives. They have the same, this is what must happen, basically, because the same force is behind them. If we look at this Black Lives Matter, it's a very clever phrase, because who can disagree that Black Lives Matter? But you need to have the lowercase BLM when you're talking about that, because the uppercase BLM, which is the organization which effectively everyone is promoting in all their different ways that they do, is a 1% funded front. Why would the 1% that couldn't give a damn about black lives or white lives or any other lives but its own, why would it fund an organization to make life better for black people and black communities? It wouldn't. So there's an ulterior motive. And that ulterior motive is, if the population comes together as one in unity and realizes that this cult, and one expression of it is the 1%, is if you like the communal enemy and not each other, then they're in desperate trouble. Because suddenly the beaches are full, symbolically, if you follow where I'm going. So they have to divide and rule the target population and play them off against each other, so they're at war with each other, and they can go about their business manipulating events without much challenge. When you lose the fear of death, because you understand that death is simply a transfer of attention from the focus of the body puts on our consciousness within this tiny band of frequencies we call the human world, and it's a transfer of attention as you withdraw from the body into a much more expanded state of awareness. That's all death is. Once you realize that and you lose the fear of death, so many other fears disappear, because the fear of death is like an anchor that holds so many other fears in place, and once you lose that, they've gone. You do this and we'll do this to you. We'll do it. I'm not bothered. I'll go and explore infinite forever. Do what you like. I am not shutting up. Instead of, I know I should speak out, but what are the consequences for me of doing it? That's what fear does. It freezes people into acquiescence, into silence, and intimidates them into keeping their head down and their mouth shut.